Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Markey. Thank you, Mr. Nolen, for being here today before the committee. You know, like many Americans and Michiganders, I'm certainly concerned as well by the recent incursions into our airspace of a Chinese surveillance balloon, as well as several as yet unidentified objects. The most recent one that flew across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and was neutralized over Lake Huron. I've been in contact with the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, your agency to monitor these occurrences, and I've called for greater transparency into these incidents. So I certainly do appreciate some of your comments that you've made here today about FAA's coordination with NORAD. So I don't want to belabor those points. You've covered those well through the hearing so far. But I did want to ask you one thing related to that. Earlier this week, the White House announced the creation of an interagency team to study the broader policy implications for detection, analysis, and disposition of unidentified aerial phenomena, and especially those that could pose potential security risks. So my question for you, does the FAA expect to be a part of that team? And has that task force actually met and is starting to work?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Peters. Yes, the FAA is part of that team. Our COO, Tim Morrell, will be our representative on their team, and that team has already met and continues to meet.
Good, good. You also mentioned to Senator Schatz, the FAA currently has people embedded in NORAD to improve coordination. But given these specific events, are there any additional bureaucratic or interoperability improvements that you can share with Congress to ensure that these concerning breaches of airspace are basically met with a seamless and immediate response?
Well, what I can tell you in an open forum is that there is a whole of government approach to this from an interagency standpoint to make sure not only that we are aligned on policy, we're aligned on response, that level of coordination is absolutely there.
Good, good. Mr. Nolen, Gerald R. Ford International Airport in Grand Rapids in Michigan is Michigan's second largest airport, over 200 aircraft operations per day, and it serves a growing part of the state of Michigan. However, even as Grand Rapids serves record numbers of passengers, it's been stymied in its efforts to expand and modernize a 60-year-old FAA air traffic control tower. Last year, I secured $5 million in congressionally directed spending for the airport to begin the design process and to replace that tower, but it's still not done. And I would just like to ask you, would you commit to working with me and the Grand Rapids Airport to ensure that a plan to replace their tower is done in a timely fashion?
Yes, sir. What I can commit is we'll definitely work with your staff in terms of, I know there's work that's ongoing there. We're committed to giving you regular updates on it and what our progress is.
Great. Well, thank you. The Unmanned Aerial Systems Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee has published its report in March of 22. The report laid the foundation for providing regulatory certainty to stakeholders looking to safely and swiftly deploy and scale unmanned aerial systems. However, the FAA's rulemaking agenda notes that a draft rule for UAS deployment outside the visual line of sight isn't expected until February of 2024, 23 months from the report to the draft rule. And that's, as you know, not even a final rule at that point. Between the long wait for this rulemaking and difficult to navigate current exemption and waiver process, I'm afraid advancements in commercial drone industry have stalled, frustrating communities in states like Michigan who are looking to take advantage of this cutting-edge technology and economic opportunity it represents. So my question for you, Mr. Nolen, what do you commit to doing everything you can to ensure that the U.S. maintains its global leadership in advanced aviation? And certainly this type of aircraft represents the future, and we need to lean into making sure we're facilitating that.
Well, thank you, sir, for the question. Let me say the U.S. is and remains the world's leader when it comes to this type of technology. To date, we've licensed over 1 million drones. Our projections are that we'll have 2.5 million by FY25. So we are working with respect to beyond visual line of sight. We stood up an aviation rulemaking ARC and a committee. We received thousands of reports. We are going, of comments, if you will. We're going through the process of going through those. But in the meantime, even as we're doing that, we have things like waivers and exemptions that we're using to enable UAS operations, some of which we've already done. So we will commit that this is, again, part of our top priority for drones, for advanced air mobility, to make sure that we stay the world's leader.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Nolen. Senator Markey and Chair